Good evening and welcome. I'll now call the Standing Committee meeting of March 2nd, 2026 to order. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewa of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing no declarations of interest at this time, we'll move on to item 4, and I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda. Trustee Jacula, Trustee Cowie, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Moving on to number 5, multi-year strategic plan presentation. And the first presentation is curriculum impact of identity data, Superintendent Jackie Leacock.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. On January 19th, 2026, a report was brought to the Board of Trustees to provide information about the DDSB Student Census 3.0. This report included clarification of the purpose, background and context, analysis, communication, and deployment plans of Student Census 3.0. I am bringing a report this evening to provide the Board of Trustees a summary of the impact of collecting this student identity data, specifically for students, educators, and school leaders. Through the student census data, we continue to learn about who our students are, that we have the privilege to serve in the DDSB. We have learned through the collection and analysis of the data from Student Census 1.0 and 2.0 a deeper understanding of the demographics of students and families we serve in the district. This understanding has informed our investment in building the capacity of our educators to implement anti-oppressive programming, pedagogy, and approaches to meet the learning needs of all our students. Tonight, 3 educators, Linda Dortelis, Stephanie Livesey, and Colin Calhoun, will share their insights into how student identity has impacted their role. I'd like to invite them to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Linda Dortelis, French facilitator. As a French language facilitator supporting educators across this district, student identity data supports my work in a variety of ways. This data facilitates partnerships with administrators to embed goals of their school achievement plan, as well as to identity-based achievement gaps and determine concrete next steps. I also use the data to provide resources that reflect who DDSB students are as well as their lived experiences, ensuring curriculum materials are not just standardized, but act as mirrors and windows for all students. Additionally, student identity data helps me in co-designing with teachers authentic tasks which prioritize student interests, experiences, and specific learning needs. The data also supports me in equipping educators with resources, pedagogical tools, and strategies for the enhancement of student success, as well as aligning IEP goals with students' background and interests to increase accessibility and engagement. Thank you.
As a MLL facilitator, student demographic data plays a critical role in how I support educators with curriculum implementation and effective pedagogy across schools. This data helps us move away from a one-size-fits-all approach and towards targeted responsive instruction. Understanding factors such as language proficiency, prior schooling, and literacy development allows us to guide educators in selecting appropriate instructional programs, including when and how to use structured literacy tools and how to choose the right entry points when implementing UDL approaches for students. It also informs how we scaffold instruction, curriculum expectations, and select materials that are both linguistically accessible, culturally relevant, and academically rigorous. At a systems level, demographic data supports program planning, professional learning, and resource allocation by identifying trends and emerging needs. It ensures instructional practices remain accurate, inclusive, and asset-based. In my role, data becomes a tool for anti-oppression, strengthening collaboration with educators, administrators, and community partners to remove barriers and improve meaningful outcomes for multilingual language learners. Thank you.
Good evening. As the literacy facilitator and previously the de-streaming instructional coach, I'd like to speak to how we can use this data to inform our programming, specifically in the areas of universal design for learning and culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy. We know, and they are explicitly embedded in our curriculum, that these frameworks are important for us acknowledging the ways that student identity, experience, background, language, family structure, cultural and social identities are connected to their learning. By being able to better understand and know our learners, we're able to tailor their learning to their experiences and their background, create more engagement, and create more success. For example, in my support with English educators, we are often examining resources and texts that we bring into the classroom. One of our curriculum expectations is all about viewing through diverse perspectives. So we want to make sure that the texts we bring reflect the students that are in front of us, but also ensuring that they reflect the communities in which these students will one day be a part. So perhaps there's a group that isn't overly well represented in a school, we might bring in texts that would then help them understand that perspective and those identities. Similarly, when we look at literacy and de-streaming as a whole, we know that the 2023 language and English curriculum and the decision to de-stream were based on identified inequalities. So using this data, we can look at some of the results we are seeing to measure if these groups that we know have been historically marginalized and overrepresented in these areas are experiencing more success if we're doing the things we need to do to better these outcomes. For specifics, when I look at the Ontario Secondary School literacy test data, I'm able to look at how some of these groups of students are performing. So I'm able to see how are our students with exceptionalities doing, how are our students who are multilingual language learners doing, and we're able to track their progress and identify areas that we can better support them.
Thanks very much. Furthermore, the student census data has also informed professional development to build educator capacity in implementing evidence-based instructional and assessment practices to meet the diverse learning needs of all students within the classroom. Some of these include using technology, choice boards, anchor charts, and expectations-based assessment. These strategies are necessary for some, but support student success for all. The student census data has also informed the development of resource documents such as a guide to support Muslim students, staff, and families, the anti-oppression strategy, and the compendium of action to support 2S LGBTQIA+ students, staff, and families, as well as support diverse pathway options for students. Knowing our students, and communities has also led to the development of identity-affirming opportunities for students and community members, such as the Affirm and Be Me groups, as well as a number of new affinity networks. Student identity data also impacts school leadership. Two vice principals, Nicole Vernon and Paul Oberoi, will now share their insights into how student identity data has impacted their roles.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Vernon, and in my role as a vice principal, I use student identity data to provide academic support, as well as platforms for student-led leadership opportunities. Additionally, using this data supports my work in providing opportunities for connections and growth, and dynamic partnership with community agencies partnering to deliver programs, resources, and services that address health and well-being, creating affirming spaces that promote dignity and honor every individual's identity. Student identity data provokes reflection as school leaders, such as what trends and key messages are emerging from my school data, for example, as it relates to sense of belonging, safety, and engagement, what specific areas are improving or declining, and how do these trends vary across different student groups? What is the feedback regarding their learning experience, sense of inclusion, and connection to school? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. When reviewing identity data as school leaders, we focus intentionally on participation and representation. For example, at my school, we have looked at who is accessing those leadership roles, extracurricular opportunities, and just as importantly, who is not. If certain identity groups are underrepresented, that signals a need to reflect on barriers within our school. To deepen our understanding of our students, we have implemented student focus groups. This implementation allows us to move from what the data shows us to what the students are experiencing. Through structured conversations, we have explored questions such as, do you see yourself reflected in the curriculum and school activities? When do you feel unheard or unseen? What would make school better for students like you? This qualitative student voice data has allowed us as a school team to identify subtle barriers that may not appear in formal data sets and also inform next steps in our school improvement plan. Most importantly, it shifts our approach from designing for students to designing with students. Our next steps are continuing our student identity deep dive by starting the junior grades and primary grade focus groups and continuing with our intermediate student focus groups for more student voice opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole and Paul. Thank you to the students, educators, and administrators for supporting this report and presentation this evening. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from trustees? Trustee Linton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, thanks to the presenters for taking the time and sharing the information. It truly, it truly does reinforce the student census data in shaping equitable and responsive decision making. But just two quick questions. One was, in the notes there it alludes to utilizing the 2025-2026 budget to enhance, I guess, the participation numbers, because they seem to be relatively low in years past. So can you share just some of the strategies that you're looking at in terms of enhancing and increasing those participation numbers?
Thank you very much for the question. We started the campaign prior to the holidays, the winter holidays, to build awareness around the census. We've continued to ramp up the promotion and the awareness through our administrators in our schools, as well as different social media tools. And we are using our research department to do some monitoring and tracking in terms of participation rates weekly. We'll be communicating those to school principals so that they're aware of the participation rates. and we'll be doing a student census on the road campaign with the Anti-Oppression Department facilitators to enhance the participation rates where we see that it might be slightly lower.
Trustee Pinello?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I echo the gratitude to all those who are here tonight to speak to the importance of the student census, and certainly I feel many of us here share the sentiment that it is very important and that we see the value in it, particularly in conversations of increasing participation. I think my question is a little bit more, I was really happy to hear about the student focus groups. I think that's wonderful in identifying barriers, because that's ultimately what you hope for in part of this work. But because I know that so many changes have happened to try to boost participation, different approaches, collaboration with, I believe, Student Senate and student trustees, I was wondering if there were already signs of different engagement, if the conversation's a little bit different this time around, if there's a little more interest, if the questions being asked are coming from a place of intrigue and not suspicion, if there's maybe a better understanding that how this data is to be used is not necessarily punitive or to out people or to make folks feel vulnerable and small and underrepresented in any ways. And so I wonder if socially the conversation has shifted a little bit, because just speaking from, I think, some of the emails that we got sort of the first time around early on in our term, there was a lot of hesitancy, anger, fear. Why are you doing this? We don't understand. And so I'm not getting those emails as much anymore. And so I guess I'm wondering if on the ground in schools, are students having different conversations, and is it a positive shift?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Pinello. The first part of your question, you were talking about engagement and interest. So we've had a very successful launch. The student census launched on the February 17th, and to date we have over 3,000 responses. So we've started off on a really good foot, in my opinion. To address the second part of your question in terms of what is the data being used for, and are we communicating that, we really have quite a big push of the social media communications in terms of where does the data go, who gets to see the data, which is trying to be transparent so that folks don't feel, as you mentioned, that they're answering questions that are going to reveal things that they don't necessarily want revealed to everyone. So where the data goes and the use and the tracking and the security of the data, we've really tried to embed that in our promotion, particularly through the students that have done a fantastic job of supporting our social media advertisement and promotion of the census.
Student Trustee Shetty?
Thank you once again for all the educators that came out today. I genuinely appreciated all the insights that you guys provided us on, and it's truly nice to hear that everything that we are giving, the information that we're giving, is being used in good ways. I actually had a question just from a student perspective when it comes to participation. I know that emails were sent out to all students to partake in this census, but I was just wondering if there was any communication to send out to principals to instruct their teachers to give like 5 minutes in class to fill it out. Just from the standpoint and from that, I think that would increase participation, and I don't think that me or the other student trustees have experienced that in our classrooms just yet. That's just my question.
Thanks for the question, and thank you for that feedback. Again, we've tried to embed that communication to principals and school administrators to encourage teachers as much as possible to allow students to fill out and complete the census in class. So we will definitely continue to communicate that message, especially if I'm hearing that's not necessarily filtering through to everybody yet. So appreciate the feedback, and we are continuing to encourage that folks give students time in class to complete the census.
Trustee Pinello?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, slightly delayed supplemental. I appreciate the answer and the insights, and that's very positive to hear. The second half of my question was actually more about maybe what the administrators are and staff are experiencing within the schools, if they're hearing slightly different conversations and tones and approaches to the census as opposed to, you know, how it's being used. All of that's important, but I guess I'm wondering if the conversations surrounding it from an on-the-ground perspective are a little different than they were the first time around, where there was that fear and that hesitation. So if you have stories to share, that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. To date, I haven't had those kind of conversations or feedback, but that will definitely be part of the ask as we move through the census time, and ask administrators that question. So definitely can bring feedback forward as the census continues to roll out.
Trustee Linton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So just seeing that the survey is open from February to August, what are the communication plans for students out of school for them to know and their parents to know that the census is still open? Because I see that sometimes these things are connected to the school year, but this goes on at least 2 or 3 months beyond the school year. So just any information on that communication strategy.
Thanks for the question. We definitely do see a bit of a dip over the summer. Really leaving the census open through the summer is to give as much possibility and opportunity as possible for folks to fill it out. But we typically, in my experience, and looking at the previous iterations of the census, it's a little bit of a dip in the participation over the summer months, but we definitely will communicate out as the census continues to be completed and towards the end of the school year that the opportunity is there in the months of July and August as well.
Trustee Cowie?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question in regards to the information being gathered in regards to First Nation, Inuit, and Métis students. How is that going about being done? Is there outreach going on to promote Scugog, Mississaugas of Scugog Island, to promote it to those students who obviously attend Durham, to the Métis Nation of Ontario's Durham office, and any other organizations that can assist with making sure Indigenous students are being heard and being included?
Our promotions have gone through social media and through schools. That's an excellent question in terms of specific community partners and agencies, and that would be something I would have to confirm and bring back to give you feedback on that. So I appreciate the question.
I can also share, if I can add, through you, Chair. Conversations have been had with Chief and Council to ensure that we are collecting data in a very safe way, recognizing the harm that has been done with Indigenous families in the past. I like your ideas about sharing it with Métis Council and other organizations. We have an upcoming IAC meeting where we will share the amazing social media campaigns that have been happening, and again, bring light to the data collection that is happening and how we're doing that in a safe and responsive way.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for the presentation. Moving on to the next one, which is Student Success Strategies, and Superintendents Aaron Elmhurst, Mohammed Hamid, Stephen Nevels.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The report can be found on page 6 of your package. This evening's presentation builds on the Student Success Report before you and highlights how proactive, responsive, and when necessary, reactive structures work together to support students across their stage of learning. As outlined in the report, these structures exist both elementary and secondary settings and are designed to strengthen progress monitoring, credit accumulation, and ultimately graduation. The presentation titled Students Across Their Stage Begins Early, Progress Monitoring to Support Every Learner, brings that report to life through the voices of school leaders and educators in Uxbridge. Joining us this evening from Uxbridge Secondary School, we welcome Melissa Lee, Uxbridge Secondary School leader, along with student support teachers Natalie Little, Ken Stackhouse, and Lindsay Hewlett. From Quaker Village Public School, we welcome Jacqueline Patterson, school leader. Together, they will share how progress monitoring begins early, how student success teams work collaboratively to respond to learner needs, and how transition planning between elementary and secondary strengthens continuity so students are known, supported, and positioned for graduation. Please join me in welcoming them to the podium.
Good evening, and thank you for having us this evening. My name is Jacqueline Patterson, and I am the principal at Quaker Village. At Quaker Village, we strive to be a community. We strive to create a place where our students feel welcome, inclusive, and have a team behind them to make sure that they are meeting their learning goals. One, we have to start being proactive. We can't start our school year being reactive. So to begin, we start with what our school layout looks like. Quaker is very unique. We have an amazing building that is designed in pods. Each pod is designed to have grade-like teams working together. This helps utilize small groups. We ensure that our student support classes and our practical learning classes are located in the right pods so they can interact with their other grade-like students as well as having their small class placement. By doing this, we have seen a huge increase in acceptance. We've seen an increase in our students integrating into other classrooms, so we get to see them not only staying in their small class for language and math, but we are also seeing them in science and social studies and in gym. To help to support this, we have to ensure that our timetabling of our staff is adequate enough to provide them with more collaboration time, team teaching. So our staff at Quaker have a minimum of 3 one-hour preps together a week. This way they get to look at their data, their progress monitoring, they're planning together, they're seeing the gaps, and then again, they're meeting their student needs by creating the small groups amongst themselves so their students are seen one-on-one with their teacher or in groups of less than 4 to help aim their programming. We also have to then start to set the stage. So starting in August, we always explain to our teachers, this is a new year, this is a fresh start for our students. Everyone is coming in with a new learning mode. Our teachers ensure that they are meeting their staff or their students in the hallways and having that eased entry. We find that a lot of our students come in within 5 to 10 minutes of the bell. So by having an entry point into the class, it allows our staff to get to know their students more one-on-one, welcome them, and make sure that they are ready to learn. Our staff then work together to do their diagnostic assessments. The diagnostic assessments that lets us do our progress monitoring, find out where our gaps are, and then where we need to go next in our learning. Our fireside chats, that is where our administration team sits down with all of our special education resource teachers, our teacher librarian, and then each teacher individually along with their educational assistants so we can see where their students are, what gaps do we need to fill, and where we need to go next. These fireside chats then move into our collaboration days that the board has given our schools, which we get 3 to 4 a year. On these collaboration days, we are monitoring the focus of the students we're monitoring the data and then moving forward with our focuses. And after each collaboration day, we sit, we reflect, and then we design our next steps. The collaboration, we also utilize our teacher librarians. Without our teacher librarians, we wouldn't be able to provide extra small group learning. This is where our teacher librarians take reading groups, and then they also do small math groups as well to help support the teachers. The utilization of our school improvement team, we meet monthly. and they bring back all the feedback from the staff. We look at our collaboration day goals, we look at our data, and then again, we set our next steps to keep planning and see what other coaches or facilitators to lead our next staff meeting would look like. Our student support program is a fabulous program, and we mirror this to help support the transition into grade 9 with Melissa Lee at Uxbridge Secondary School. Our student support program sees 40 students. So it is a class that has 10, but we reverse integrate 30 students based on their needs in language and math to help support them and set them up for de-streamed language and math in high school and make sure that we have closed those gaps to support them. Clicker doesn't like you. Okay, so to help support that, we have our identification, placement, and review committee meetings. Between Quaker and USS, we have a great relationship. We have pre-review meetings before we sit down with the families. Our grade 8 teachers, along with the guidance team at USS, have a meeting. We talk about the students' strengths and needs. We talk about where they are going and their growth. And then we have meetings with parents and the students. This is when we include the students that have their student voice. And then we have our family of schools transition meetings and guidance in January, and then grade 8 visits and spirit days. So there is a lot of collaboration between USS and Quaker. We are in constant contact. Our teachers are adapting their program and working along the grade 9 teachers at USS to ensure that our programming is very similar to help ease the transition into high school.
Good evening. And to continue on the proactive strategies that USS and Quaker and all of our feeder schools work together, it's an important collaboration. We have our grade 8 information night in February where all of our feeder schools are invited to attend with their families, our non-feeder schools as well, so they can get used to our building, transition to a big space because our building, our footprint is triple, quadruple the size of many of our feeder schools. They can have tours and understand course selection. That then leads me as a principal. I meet with my 6 principal colleagues at all of my feeder schools in the spring. I visit them on site and have some one-on-one conversations to understand our incoming grade 9s, get to understand beyond the IPRC meetings some lived realities of some of our students so we can get a better understanding of what they're going to be walking into our building with, and we can be proactive in getting supports in place right when we hit the ground in September and make sure we're connecting our students with a caring adult. When I'm doing those visits with our feeder school principals, I also pop in on the grade 8s and have another conversation with them. I've already met them back in December, but I want to continue my face to the name so that they get more and more comfortable with coming to our space. And then that launches them to us on grade 9 day in September, which is an amazing opportunity for them to have the building to themselves, get to know a lot of our staff, get comfortable circulating through our building. And then once they're in our building as a grade 9, they then get led through the year through our SLAM program, which are student leaders acting as mentors. That helps with their transition as well, going through some important topics throughout the year and citizenship skills, learning skills, and getting to know about high school. And then the last proactive strategy that we have before they really get to us is looking at the data that's forward shared with us. Grade 3 and 6 EQAO data, their grade 8 strand data. I collate that and I share it with my student success team who are behind me. And if the clicker will work, we'll go there. There we go. Part of the biggest asset I have is arming myself with a strong student success team. Along with the 250 grade 9s coming in, we have 750 other students in grades 10 through 12. So it's very important that I have a strong staff, and I have that benefit of the staff behind me and listed on the screen here, a very forward-thinking, empathetic, compassionate, flexible staff. That will work with our students getting to their goal. They all come with individual strengths, needs, and desires, and there is no one path to that stage. So we have to ensure as educators we're always focusing on what's best for each student, meeting them where they're at, and getting to them to where they want to go. So I've purposely timetabled a junior success team of Ken and Natalie, and who also have a English specialist and literacy background. So they will tell you in a moment how they leverage that to help support literacy along with student success. Lindsay Hewlett is our senior student success teacher who also teaches our MLL students. So we also leverage her MLL background to help our MLL students. We have a SAL and credit recovery teacher, an EA2 that supports our student success team throughout the day so that we can do some more individualized and small group guided practice. And our curriculum lead oversees this entire team. So they're better to speak to their parts of their portfolio, so I'm going to pass it along so they can speak to the strategies they take throughout the semester to help support our students. I'll pass it over to Ken first.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. I'm very excited to be part of this team, this junior success team for grade 9 and 10 support, and the success team as a school. We take a proactive approach and have ongoing conversations with our teachers, our mainstream and D-stream teachers across the board. We also, once a month, I chair a grade 9 meeting and a grade 10 meeting, and Lindsay chairs her meetings for grade 11 and 12. At that meeting, we invite admin, guidance, academic resource, student success, and our social worker to make sure that we are seeing the students and getting the support that they need, and also discussing what's going on in their classrooms and how we can help them individually. I work individually with students on an ongoing basis as identified by their classroom teachers or through academic resource, and support them with their organizational skills, their learning skills, social emotional learning. That's supported with our EA2, Rebecca Williams, as well. We help them with their coursework and make sure that they are, staying on top of the things that they need to and not slipping through in their classrooms where it could be difficult in a large room. We also do small group support, and I've been invited into many classrooms, math, science, geography classrooms, to work with small groups of students while their teacher is working with the whole class, or to support and co-teach with them. Natalie and I this week are doing some structured literacy lessons, modeling some structured literacy lessons with the grade 9 English team, and supporting those teachers as they continue on with that work. And in the summertime, in July, we'll be doing our credit recovery summer school at USS. And at the end of the year, guidance and the success team will be doing the promotion meetings just to assess the credit completion and the pathways these students are on.
Good evening. I'm Natalie Little, and I am the junior student success teacher as well as a teacher librarian and an English teacher. And I've been able to use my library periods as well as student success along with Ken. We decided to really focus on trying to close our literacy gaps. We have been finding over the last few years that literacy is definitely decreasing, which we are seeing across all subject areas. And so using the DDSB's structured literacy programs that we have, Colin has helped with, we are now doing screeners for all of our grade 9s when they come into grade 9. And we are using the Maze Acadient screener. So we did that with every single grade 9 English classroom. Next year, we are going to start with every single subject in grade 9 to get that data early. Then when we get the results, we go through the overall results and share those with staff so that our staff can understand what our students are coming to high school with in terms of their literacy. And we all know that literacy is an indicator of success and is a gateway for students crossing the stage eventually. So as a team, we're trying to encourage all of our teachers to recognize that literacy is a whole school approach and that there are some very simple things we can all do to help our students get closer to their goals. So using that data, we then, as Ken mentioned, we are going into every single grade 9 classroom and running at least 3 structured literacy lessons with the classes using Tier 1 instruction. And we're hoping to build capacity amongst our staff so they feel more comfortable continuing with that work so that our students can be successful and continue on. In the future, we're hoping to try to have more Tier 3 instruction, but that's certainly something we are still trying to figure out within our building. but I think this has been a good first step, and we're seeing positive results in the building.
Thank you so much. My name is Lindsay Hewlett, and as was mentioned, I have the opportunity to work with our senior student success students as well as our MLLs. I'm going to speak specifically to my supports in regards to our multi-language learners. So in being the MLL teacher as well as a student success teacher, I have the opportunity to continue some of the structured literacy work in my classroom. So I'm able to really focus in on the structured literacy instruction with the MLL students, which supports their reading and writing and their overall success. But this role also allows me the opportunity to be collaborative with my fellow colleagues in the building. So I have the opportunity to work one-on-one with those teachers. I have the opportunity to explore the step levels for those MLL students. I'm able to do some coaching in regards to utilizing translation tools, both for the students and for the teachers alike. I am able to provide some test and exam supports, individual one-on-one help for the MLL students as well, which really allows us to focus in on closing the gap. It allows me to target specific instructions that are needed to support those students. And then the last point up there deals with the idea of a safe space and building community. The greatest reward through this role for me has been the ability to create that community. So I just end there because we know that in building community and creating safe spaces, we're helping to support academic learning. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Trustee Cunningham?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Two quick questions. One is about credit recovery. I'm wondering, how stringent are the requirements for that? Are students doing credit recovery meeting the same standards as students who may have done well the first time around? So is credit recovery as significant an achievement as the first time around? And second of all, with summer school, is that also similar in quality to what we'd see during the school year? I've read some news coverage lately about universities starting to penalize for seeing things like summer school pop up. So I'm just wondering, making sure that these two things show students in their best light and they're able to succeed moving on, having done either credit recovery or summer school.
Through you, Chair. In terms of credit recovery, each credit recovery course looks different for each student, right? So a student may have received a 40 in their credit versus a student who may have received a 20, right? So the amount of work that they do to complete the credit is different. So what happens is the teacher that had originally taught the credit to the student provides materials that the student still needs to complete to the credit recovery teacher, and they're able to finish that. For some students, they'll just finish it to the bare minimum and get the 50. Others will continue on and get a mark higher than a 50. So it's really individualized for the student. The integrity of the credit is the same, whether it's credit recovery or through the semester. The same with summer school. So summer school is different in whether a student is taking a course for the first time, in which it would be a full month course, or if they're repeating a course, which would be a 2-week course, or sometimes even all of our high schools also run a credit recovery program for students who just need to complete potentially a few assignments. There's also credit rescue that we have at the end of their credit completion, rather, that we have at the end of the semester for students who just may have not handed in a couple assignments. They might be in the backpack or on the computer and not printed off. So there's an opportunity for students to engage with that as well to earn their credit.
Student Trustee Shetty?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I want to start off by thanking all the staff that came in today to speak about what they do for students. I think it's truly heartwarming to see that. And I think my question kind of goes to reading the report. I saw that our school board has a graduation rate of 90%. That's very high. That's very great. It's very amazing. It's because of the work of our staff. My kind of a question is I also saw that there's a lot of resources when it comes to credit accumulation. So I think as a board, as a student reading all of that, it seems like there's a lot of ways and avenues for me to graduate, and it's very accessible. So my question is kind of going to the fact that is the 10% that aren't graduating, is it a matter of a lack of resources? Or is it about their awareness of those resources? Or is it simply a mindset about the importance of graduation? Because it's hard to believe that if a student wants to really, graduate and they're giving full support from their staff to complete that, I think it kind of makes me ask the question, is the difficulty of the curriculum, or is it their mindset, or is it the knowledge of those resources? And I was just thinking it would be great to see some stats when it comes to that.
Through you, Chair. There's lots of reasons why a student potentially wouldn't graduate. So it may be that they haven't completed their 40 hours of community involvement. So that could be one reason. It could be their literacy test requirement. There's other components that we would work with a student potentially after their 4th or 5th year of high school. The data in the report speaks specifically to the 5-year graduation rate. We'll be looking in a couple of weeks at the board meeting at credit accumulation and graduation rates, and you'll be able to see the difference between 4-year and 5-year. So for some of our students, they come back for an additional semester to earn a couple credits that they may not have earned during their first 4 years. For others, it's life circumstance that has created a void for them in terms of their 30 credits and the requirements for graduation, that we continue to work with students after graduation, after their 4th or 5th year, to be able to complete those as well.
Trustee Morton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Principal Lee, Principal Patterson, thank you for being there. Principal Lee, your team, you mentioned what a strong staff you have. I completely agree with you. And Jacqueline Patterson, you also have a very strong staff. Thank you for bringing such an important message regarding student success to our boardroom. And I'm sorry I'm not there to greet you in person. One thing stands out, everything stands out, but I really like the fact that you talked about your grade 8 teachers meeting with your grade 9 teachers to make that transition from elementary to secondary that much easier for our students. I've known that for a long time, and I really am pleased that you're talking about that. We need to make sure that all schools are doing that. So thank you for being here and doing such a wonderful job.
Trustee Thatcher?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's always, I think the word was used, heartwarming, but many other good words. It's always great to hear from such a committed team of educators around the supports and programming, tremendous number of supports and programming that are in place. I'd like to thank everyone involved for the report, and then also for the follow-up presentation here tonight. I really enjoyed it, and I found it extremely informative. I just had one question, and it's around the 30 credits my way, which is, well, to me, it's a relatively new program. I was just wondering if I could get a little bit more information around how that's working, and if there are any plans to continue that into the future.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. We've previously brought reports on 30 credits my way. So it is not necessarily a program, but it's approached so that students have access to whatever pathway they choose. So for instance, if a student from the onset in grade 9 had a plan to graduate in 5 years, we map out what that could look like for that student. For another student, depending on their individual strengths or needs, they may have a plan to graduate that might be even longer than that. And we work with those students to allow that to happen. For some students looking to graduate even faster, through Reach Ahead and through summer school, looking to graduate even before the full 4th year, we work with them individually to be able to make that happen as well. So that's what 30 Credits My Way is. It puts the student in the driver's seat in terms of their pathway. Our goal with 30 Credits My Way is when a student comes forward and says, you know, I've heard about this and I'd really like to try it. Our answer should be yes, let's figure out how we can make that happen for you.
Student Trustee Singh.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It was great reading this report as well as hearing from school leaders about some amazing strategies that enable students to be successful. My question is around graduation rates and credit accumulation. They're presented as primary indicators for student success, but two students can go through this course or the credit and have vastly different experiences and vastly different grasp of the content within that subject. So what steps can the board take to expand our definition of success to include other measures like learning quality, engagement, well-being, rather than simply being focused on attaining a credit?
So definitely agree with you. And again, it's really individualized for the student, right? So in a couple weeks, we'll bring some information specifically around credit attainment and graduation rates. The ministry only tracks the information that's in this report this evening, right? So they track the credit accumulation of grade 10 students so that they have 16 credits by the end of grade 10. We often say 16 by 16. The ministry also looks at that 5-year graduation rate within the student achievement plan that every board develops. That's within the report tonight. So that's kind of the ministry focus in terms of tracking that over time. Our census, our positive school climate, all the other surveys that we do give us that other piece of data around how students are feeling, that sense of belonging within their schools, that sense of wellness within their school. So that's where we gather some of that other information from.
And I think Director Williams-Taylor would like to add something as well.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. And Student Trustee Singh, that's a really great question because we know that the experiences of students through their entire 4 years is more than just a mark and more than just a credit. So we recognize that the credit accumulation and the walking across the stage does launch students into the next phase of their lives. But we also do recognize that there are students who have particular needs that will cause them to be in a circumstance where they are being successful with their stage because their potential is such that they meet different milestones than the ones that have been articulated in a graduation rate. And so we do, in our district, we have completion ceremonies where there are students who do in fact attain a certificate of completion, and they are celebrated for doing that. And furthermore, coming up, and you will all have the opportunity to attend when we have Student Recognition Night, because that is a night where students who have walked a very difficult journey, whether it is coming back, we have sometimes adult students who are recognized on that evening, who their success is a personal success through the challenges of their experiences through school. And those students, that evening is particularly celebratory because not every district has that night. And so our district does recognize that success is defined very differently, and that everyone who attains their goal is in fact regaled and celebrated.
Trustee Linton.
Thank you for you, Chair. So from the lens of no student left behind, and in light of the recent incidents involving youth in our region, including 14-year-olds from Whitby charged with armed robbery, a teen who's connected to one of the largest drug busts in Durham, and the growing concern reflected in the town of Ajax motion regarding boys who have gone missing and are absent from school for extended periods, with the understanding that we are seeing students in their early teens being lured into this behavior. How does the student success strategy provide sustained support for students who may be engaged in high-risk behavior or becoming involved with the criminal justice system?
Thank you for that question, and through you, Chair. Thank you for that question, Trustee Linton. And what you speak of is the importance of the relationship that the team at Uxbridge talked about in terms of how do they create those spaces prior to students coming into the building where they can understand and start to begin the process of building relationship with those students. Within our sphere of control as a school and as an education system, how can we create the mechanisms to create and to minimize and mitigate the pressures that some of the pieces that you were talking about that may be external to the education system but manifest in the school system? How to create contextually different spaces that validate, affirm, as you heard, build community and connection. And then as you also heard, start to create programming that starts to be suited to the learner of the student so that every student can cross their stage. Within their sphere of influence, you've heard some of the strategies that the folks at Uxbridge and at all our schools are starting to put in place. There is much work to be done. We have not arrived, to your point. We do recognize that that is something that we are paying a lot of attention to and really reflecting on, in particular, that notion of how student success structures can begin to anticipate and understand and create environments that start to mitigate and minimize and create protective barriers, just to that point, if that helps.
Trustee Pinello.
Thank you, Chair, through you. And first and foremost, thank you so much for the presentation and being here this evening. My question perhaps pivots a little bit. So I'm looking at page 7 of 10 in the report under 6.2.1, proactive structures, and point B, so student transition meetings between elementary and secondary schools and staff and support teams. So this for me was a bit of a flag because it is something that from about now when folks start touring their secondary schools until August, September, when that enrollment's being finalized and folks are actually gearing up to go back to school, we see, or perhaps I see, more emails and conversations around bias in those conversations. So my question focuses on how are we measuring and addressing bias in transition conversations, not necessarily always for folks who have IEPs or are designated to need additional supports, but just generally. And so while streaming isn't occurring the same way in grade 9 for certain subjects, and that has addressed some of the concerns, it doesn't necessarily prevent down the road streaming conversations. And to Trustee Linton's point, this idea that if you are labeled as a troublesome student or a bright student or a brilliant student, it does influence in many ways the conversations and the tones and the language that are sometimes used, not just by others who you look for guidance, but also within oneself. So I'm wondering, because there's so much influence and power in being part of a system that has a language of its own, a great many acronyms, I wonder, how are we challenging and capturing this to really demonstrate whether language implicitly or explicitly in these transitions and in this student success conversation amongst staff and families, because it can come from there as well, and in particular with students, are influencing, limiting, or encouraging student success. I'm wondering, do we have ways that we're monitoring this, measuring and actively addressing it? Is it captured in any statistics? Because it's a trend that, starts right now when folks are, or I guess maybe February, when folks are starting their selections for courses. I'm just wondering if and what those conversations and stop gaps look like. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Trustee Pinello. We all know that bias is something that is very, very powerful, and sometimes people don't even know that it's operating. And so we spend a lot of time, first of all, thinking about who we have sitting at the table. Because if we have folks at the table who can present different realities in those conversations, you have different perspectives that can unpack certain things. We also spend a lot of time, we had the conversation on the census data prior to this as well. So the census data also begins to reveal disproportionate outcomes that we're seeing across the district where we can pay specific attention to certain things. Furthermore, in our family of school meetings and in the conversations that school leaders have, we're constantly working through learning around anti-oppression and the way in which anti-oppression manifests in the bias and in the decision making, and challenging ourselves to really pay attention to your point, to stop arbitrary decisions that are happening without a fulsome suite of data tools in front of us, qualitative data in particular, to be able to make informed choices. So when we speak about students crossing their stage, we're very, and we do understand there's a journey to go here. We understand that this is not something where you arrive, but we do recognize that their stage is not a stage that we set for them. It is a stage that is unfolded when they're affirmed and they're in learning environments where their true gifts and their performance meets their potential. So it's a challenge of interrupting where we see those pinch points happening, to have multiple conversations with different individuals at the table who can challenge some of the assumptions that are being made. It's in our progress monitoring when we're visiting schools and looking at data and looking at patterns of learning, where when we start to see disproportionate outcomes, we're always interrogating with our school leaders how we're paying attention to some of that. You heard around some of the student success mechanisms. When the student success team is meeting to look at patterns within their schools, we work with them to understand if you're seeing disproportionate representation of students in those student success meetings, that's a flag. And that's a flag where we have to start engaging in some of that unlearning that, that bias is built on, to begin to slowly chip away, to really start to create goals and actions in terms of how we can start to reduce some of those disproportionate outcomes. I'm not saying that it's an easy task, but it is a conversation, as you know, that we are having. And being part of this district for the last 10 years, I've seen a significant shift in who we have sitting at the table, who's having those conversations, what sorts of things we're talking about, and what we're starting to see in some of our outcomes, if that helps a little bit. And it may, by the way, to your previous conversation around that, what you're hearing about the census, maybe some of the individuals are seeing some of that impact actually on the ground and in the experience of students, and that might be why we're not seeing some of the challenges that we were experiencing previously as well.
Student trustee Shetty.
Thank you for your response earlier. I had two follow-up questions. You mentioned several possible reasons that students do not graduate. My first question is, do we collect data to determine whether one factor occurs more frequently than the other? For example, is it mostly OSSLT, or is it the 40-hour graduation, the community involvement? And then my second question is there a formal process in place to gather feedback from students who have chosen to drop out of high school? Like, for example, is there like an exit survey that asks them like what worked for them during their high school process and what didn't work for them? But yeah, those are my two questions.
So we engage through you, Chair. We engage students in an exit survey in both grade 8 and grade 12 because we want them to be able to articulate what had worked for them in their previous stage of learning. In terms of the students that leave us without graduation, we don't have specific data. We could probably actually pull it. We currently have two what we call re-engagement counselors, so they're retired guidance counselors who reach out to students who have left us without graduation, and that's where they engage in those conversations and support the student and continue to support the student along their pathway to graduation. So for some, if it is just the community involvement hours, they will work with them and their families to find a location that would work for them. For others, it's some more courses that they need to take. So, is night school the best option for them? Is Con Ed, our adult day school, the best for them? And those counselors work with those students to re-engage them in whatever way is best for them at the current stage that they're in.
Trustee Linton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So looking at figure 5 on page 10, where we're slightly below the provincial average and sitting around 59% of students in grades 6, 9, and 10, knowing how to access mental health supports, feels like a number that should be concerning, especially with some of the challenges our young people are facing. So just wanted to see if there was any feedback or thoughts around how we improve that number. And also, what does that data look like for students in grade 11 and 12?
Through you, Chair. Trustee Lynn, could you just help me out? I missed what you were referencing within the report. What page number?
Oh, page 5 of 10. The big number 10 on this thing that
So is that in terms of the mental health supports?
So it's measure percentage of grade 6, 9, and 10 students report being aware of mental health supports and services in order to seek supports for mental health. So the provincial average is 60%, and we are sitting at 59%.
Thank you for that. So this is a new measure that the ministry has just started tracking. You'll see for the 22-23 school year, there was no data. They only started tracking it in 23-24. On EQAO, in grades 3, 6, 9, and 10, there's actually questions about, in the student information section, on whether they know of mental health supports. The ministry has also implemented modules within both our elementary and secondary schools, specifically around mental health and mental health supports. So based on those modules, students answer in 3, 6, 9, and 10 whether they're aware of mental health supports within their community. And you'll see that we're consistent with the province in terms of this first year of asking that question. The hope is that over time with those modules, more and more students will be aware of what's available within their community and who to go to if there's concerns with their mental health.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much. Moving on to recommended actions, I'm looking for a mover and a seconder to approve the Standing Committee meeting minutes of February 2nd, 2026. Trustee Edwards, Trustee Jackula, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moving on to the information items. First up, item A is trustee determination and distribution. And I just want to note, make sure that all trustees are aware that this report was revised a couple of times. So the last one was one that was recirculated at 12:45 p.m. So just make sure that you have the accurate one. And I'm going to turn it over to Associate Director Lisa Bianca.
Great, thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The 2026 trustee determination and distribution process outlines the Durham District School Board's legislative responsibilities in preparation for the October 2026 municipal election. This process ensures that trustee representation across the region remains fair, democratic, and reflective of population changes and consistent with the board's strategic priority of connected communities. The Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, or MPAC, updated the 2026 Population Electoral Group, also called the PEG report, and it identifies an electoral population of 403,713 across the DDSB's 7 municipalities. This surpasses the threshold set out in Ontario Regulation 41200 and permits the board to increase the number of elected trustees from 11 to 12 for the 2026-2030 term. DDSB will continue to have one appointed Indigenous trustee, bringing the total possible number of trustees to 13 beginning in November 2026. There are 2 distribution options presented for allocating the additional trustee seat. So option A, which I would call a regulation-based allocation, is created by applying the formula prescribed in the regulation, resulting in assigning the new trustee position to the City of Oshawa, which has seen significant population growth. This option maintains a strict representation by population model. Option B would be for the board to create a low population municipality designation. The board may designate Brock, Scugog, and Uxbridge as low population municipalities. This option increases rural representation by assigning the additional trustee to an individual or combined low population area, increasing representation in the north from 1 trustee to 2. Representation for all other municipalities in this model would remain unchanged. It should be noted that trustees exercised this option back in 2014, but did not in 2018 or 2022. As noted in the revised agenda this evening, the report was updated to include a 3rd course of action, that is to maintain the current number of trustees. Under the regulation, when there has been a population increase within a board's area of jurisdiction, a board may determine the number of elected members in accordance with the regulation. This process allows, but does not require, boards to increase the number of elected trustees when population thresholds are exceeded. Under this option, the board would choose not to add an additional elected trustee seat for the 2026-2030 term, thereby maintaining the current number of 11 elected trustees plus one appointed Indigenous trustee, thus preserving the existing representation structures and avoiding redistribution for the upcoming election cycle. So in summary, the board will be required to make 2 resolutions before March 31st, 2026. The first resolution will be whether to designate a low population municipality or municipalities, and the second will define the final distribution of those trustee positions. Following this evening's discussion and instructions from trustees, staff are preparing to bring 2 possible motions for the decision on low population municipality designation, so a yes or a no, and then 3 possible motions for trustee distribution, Oshawa, the North, or no change. However, if there are other alternate options that come from our discussion this evening, staff will amend these motions as required and bring to the board at your direction. Thank you, and I'm open to take any questions you may have for either myself or Council Cotter, who is also very well versed in this legislation. Thank you.
Trustee Morton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Firstly, I am very pleased that we have the option of moving to an additional trustee. Another voice at the trustee table is a good thing. Secondly, I would like to provide some background information regarding trustee determination that the majority of trustees probably are not aware of. Prior to 2018, the townships of Brock, Uxbridge, and Scugog had 2 elected trustees. And at that time, the population of the town of Whitby was increasing rapidly, and the board decided in 2018 that Whitby should have a 3rd trustee. Hence, in 2018, there was only 1 elected trustee for the northern townships, and 3 were elected for Whitby. And I realize that those 3 rural townships only have approximately 10% of the student population, but I believe that they need and they deserve a 2nd trustee voice. From Beaverton in the north to Goodwood in the west to Cartwright in the east, a 2nd trustee would be greatly appreciated. Another change that has taken place regards the student trustee representation. 2 years ago, that process changed. Prior to that, Oshawa Whitby had a student trustee, Ajax Pickering had a student trustee, and the 3 northern municipalities had a student trustee. That's no longer the case. In fact, this school year and next school year, we do not have a student trustee representing the North. Our 3 student trustees are doing a great job, and I'm very appreciative of their efforts, but I really think that we need to have the voice of the North. I'm extremely pleased that the staff are now working on a northern strategy which aims at meeting the needs of the communities of Brock, Uxbridge, and Scugog. Our rural students and their families experience unique challenges. I realize that Oshawa is rapidly growing and we are opening new schools there. But when it comes to the board meeting on March the 23rd, I'm going to be supporting the option where we declare townships of Brock, Uxbridge, and Scugog as low population municipalities, enabling a 2nd trustee voice from the North. Thank you.
Trustee Cowie?
I thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I saw that in the report, 403,713. What was the population when it was last done, if I may ask?
Absolutely. If I can direct you to Appendix A. In 2022, our population was 389,455. So we were fairly steady going all the way back to 2010. We were 383,641. We dropped for a couple of years, and then we've been climbing since 2022.
Trustee Edwards?
Thank you, and I appreciate all the information that is brought for this report because I remember going through it a couple of times now since first being elected in 2010, and I appreciate the history, some of the history that what has been given. One of the things that is really crucial to note is that before the board had sent a letter to the Minister of Education because of the irregularities of the impact data, because impact basically actually had noted a decrease in voting population basically in the previous term because of the fact that they no longer, at that point in time, they no longer basically were keeping a record of voting voters, accurate record of that. And so we had actually requested for the minister to, based on population and so forth, that we requested for an additional trustee, and of course at that point in time it was denied. And we also used to get a trustee determination guide, which was not updated for this time around, which is, and I kind of suggest it's because of sort of the political climate of whether we are going to be around by the time by the time the election is called. The election is set for nominations. But I do have a question, and this is around, again, it's partially around the new, basically, authority under the new, basically under Bill 33, and that the minister has the ability to basically any issue that is brought forth that is deemed public interest, and he has the right to determine whether it is public interest or not as well, is that if we, at this point in time, do actually put in for a request, whether he has the ability to actually say no, because under the current regulations and his now new power and authority, even if we put in this sort of thing, does he have the power to say no? And I'm looking at it because he doesn't have to go to the lieutenant governor anymore, or, you know, at this point in time, he basically can change a regulation based on his somebody bringing up a concern because it's a public interest. So just any thoughts about that would be much appreciated.
And I think I see Council Cotter wanting to respond to that.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So thank you for the question. So I guess just to unpack it a little bit, as a matter of first instance, there is no approval authority vested in the minister under Reg 41200. So the discretion rests with the board. There must be a report delivered to the minister following the decision, as well as to the municipalities that are impacted by the decision. The municipalities have a right of appeal that goes to the Ontario Land Tribunal for determination, not to the minister. So ultimately, if there's a municipality that complains, they would do that by way of appeal, and that would go to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Having said that, as you point out, Trustee Edwards, there is increased authority in the minister to engage with boards, whether it be in direction in terms of board's conduct or supervision. And those powers, as you say, can be engaged if there's a matter of public interest. So the question is, would this type of decision engage that? And what could the minister exercise those powers? And we don't know. It hasn't been done, but obviously those powers are very broad. So that's certainly a potential, regardless of which way the decision goes or doesn't go. I think the minister always has that authority now under the new bill to engage with boards if he deems it appropriate to do so. So I hope that answers your question, but that sort of, I think, lays out the general framework.
Trustee Pinello?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. I'm actually quite torn and had made so many notes in this particular area because from a statistical perspective, when I looked at the 2021 census data, which primarily compared 2016 to 2021, Oshawa grew by 10%, which was almost double the national average of 5.2%. So it was just over about 175,000 new residents. And then we know from 2021 until now that the growth has continued, perhaps to a lesser extent. It's perhaps slowed a little bit, but it's still been growth nonetheless. And at the same time, I knew that there would likely be from Trustee Morton a very persuasive discussion on equity, particularly for the North, and ensuring representation within this space. Because I think a lot of us could acknowledge that despite being part of Durham, the region, and Durham District School Board, that there are still a great many barriers where geography and other factors present challenges to ensure that that additional voice could potentially assist in amplifying some of the needs and the realities over a very large geographical area that already has a hard time accessing conversations and spaces like this. So while Oshawa does have great need and a large and growing population of students and families with our new schools opening and new communities and developments happening, yes, in the North, but also permits being passed for higher density living in both the central and southern areas, I'm having a really hard time finding balance between the demand of need within one municipality and the equitable need for the northern area. And so when I was looking at the chart of future projections and the image in particular, it's page 30 of our package, so Appendix D, that just stipulates the number of the electoral group and then the number of members. We are quite a ways off from being able to add additional trustees, and so there's not sort of an in-the-middle step to allow us to add another one or two in, let's say, 3 to 4 years if we were to go with option B, appointing a trustee to the north and instead having Oshawa wait with the existing 3. So I'm actually quite torn and would appreciate maybe, I mean, certainly the decision cannot be made for me, but would perhaps, value from or see value in further conversation around what would the perceived impact be for if we did forego adding a trustee to Oshawa and instead did focus on the north. But I suppose I'm asking what happens in 3 years if Oshawa is incredibly, trustees still exist, and Oshawa is incredibly slammed and there are greater needs in that sense. We can't necessarily come back and say, just kidding, we're taking this trustee from the north and appointing it here. So to the point of, asking the minister to intervene and these sort of things, but I guess I'm just trying to gauge what the supports or maybe the contingencies would have been that have been done in the past when there's been rapid growth without an addition of a trustee, and whether or not it's going to be sustainable if we do go with option B, or if there is some further thoughts from maybe fellow trustees on going where the population is growing first and reevaluating down the road. So I'm actually quite torn in this, just because it's a very hard discussion and I see value, immense value in both positions.
Thank you, and if I can just respond to part of that, while the discussion will obviously be among trustees, I should clarify that the designation of a low population municipality is undertaken every election cycle. So if that was pursued for 2026 to 2030, in 2030 the decision would come up again, similar to what it did in 2018, where in that cycle trustees decided not to pursue that. So it is basically a decision for the 4 years, and then it's revisited, as well as the electoral quotients, or the electoral quotients are recalculated based on the population data at the time. So there is a possibility, if there is a significant population shift, that the quotients could come out differently for a subsequent 4-year cycle or the one after that. So they are fresh calculations every cycle.
Trustee Cowie?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to pulling up a map as well of obviously our district and just how massive Uxbridge, Brock, Scugog is compared to the rest. And while I know that we've seen some of the population go down for those three northern townships, it's still also the only area that has one trustee for 42,000 people. The rest are less than that. And for Oshawa, it'd go down to almost 30,000 per trustee. So I'm just wanting to mention that and ask about how we go about dealing with that. And for such roles, if there is one to be looked at a lower population area or rural area or northern part of our district, how that goes about doing that to make sure there's adequate representation up there, because that is a massive territory.
Chair Brown?
Oh, thank you, through you, Chair. I think Trustee Cowie just said exactly what I was going to say, so thank you.
Student Trustee Shetty?
Sorry, I have 2 questions. I know Trustee Pinello brought up the idea of option A and option B. So my first question is a point of clarification. Has the decision already been made? Or are we talking about making, okay, I just see some head nods there. I just wanted to provide some input from a student perspective. I think last year, Trustee Morden brought this up too, but last year we were very grateful to have a student trustee from the north, Trustee Hoare, and she was phenomenal when it came to advocating for those needs. As a student trustee who regularly attends Senate meetings and talks to senators from the north, I think I speak for my co's when I say that there is a gap when it comes to the experiences that northern students experience versus students in Oshawa, Pickering, Ajax. And I think the 3 of us recognize that the reason that, for example, if you were to ask one of us today that we would be very comfortable with having a student trustee from the north is because our lived student experiences, right, from Oshawa, Ajax, Pickering, it's similar because we live in an urban area. So I think I can agree with Trustee Morden and the other people's concerns when you say that even though it is a smaller population, the experiences that they go through is drastically different, and I think it calls for more voice in that sense as well. If you're asking us from a student trustee perspective, I think something we would like to see in the future is a northern student trustee, and I think that being said, it goes without saying that just a perspective to put out there is I think we would like to see more representation there as well as a student. In the future. So I just wanted to put that out there as a student.
Trustee Edwards?
Thank you, and I really, really do appreciate your comments, but it's also in the hands of the student trustees to actually make that recommendation and make that change. So if that's something that you wish to do, then that's something that the Senate discussion at your Senate and bring it to the table would be much appreciated from that perspective. And just another note when it comes to, again, it has been a conundrum previously sitting on this board, whether when we removed a trustee from the north and we did redistribute that trustee to basically Whitby at the time, it was a really, really difficult decision. And one of the things that I also sort of consider, not only as far as the experience is concerned, but the experience of our trustees. We in each of our municipalities, whether we have 2 or 3, we have our counterparts that can help advocate and also distribute the workload. What I don't see now is that the North, with its unique needs, doesn't have a counterpart to share those concerns and those thoughts and the workload. And especially when we're moving towards trying to get newer and younger people involved who are already busy, who may be working and so forth, it might be much more difficult to represent such a vast majority, a vast geographic area, but also the needs that are there as well. So, and it is a different experience living up in the north, and what the needs of that lived experience is different. So that's just something that I'm also considering when I'm looking at this, when we go to make a decision, basically at the March board meeting. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, moving on to item B. Oh, sorry. Oh, well, okay. You're still not top of the list yet, though, Trustee Thatcher. I have Trustee Brown beat you to it. Trustee Brown beat you to it.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. And as we're having this conversation, one thing that kind of came to mind when I think about what Council Cotter said to us when we first became trustees is that we are trustees for all the students. Yeah. So I think also that is something that I'm also keeping in mind to help make a decision, is that I know that the North, I agree with Trustee Morton on this one where, you know, I've been visiting schools up north. It's the workload still hasn't, it's a lot for one person. So that's where I'm kind of thinking. I'm also thinking that we are all trustees of the North. I don't separate myself.
Trustee Thatcher?
Thank you, Chair. I also find this a very difficult decision. I arrived in 2018 after the decision was made, but I do recall some of the concerns from the families in the North at losing one of their trustees. I'm sure it was a difficult decision for trustees to make. If we look at this as areas specifically population and the needs, well, the Oshawa area will certainly outweigh the North. If we look at our priority schools, we have 6 grade 3 priority schools and I think 12 grade 6 priority schools, so the needs are most definitely there. I don't think, however, that we're comparing apples to apples when we look at the North versus Oshawa, and I think that's something that we need to consider very carefully. The North is a very unique area. It has very special needs. Geographically, it doesn't compare in many ways to any of the other areas. And I think these are the things that we need to take a look at as a group of trustees before we make that decision. I think somebody said an equitable decision, and that may be the way we look at it. But I think we need to think outside the box a little bit on this one. And not that I've actually made a decision either. I just think that we need to consider that we're not comparing apples to apples when we compare Oshawa and the North. That's what I'd like to add to the discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Seeing no further question. Moving on to item B, which is the 2024-2025 trustee expenses, and I'll turn it over to AD Bianca again.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. This annual monitoring report provides an overview of trustee expenses for the period November 15th, 2024 to November 14th, 2025, as required under the Education Act and the DDSB trustee expense policy. It outlines the reporting process, reimbursable expense parameters, and the related posting requirements, including the quarterly public disclosures. This report includes a summary of individual trustee expenditures and discretionary spending for the term, reflecting adherence to the established policy and procedure. Trustee transparency remains essential to strengthening public trust and supporting accountable governance. Funding for trustee expenses continues to be provided through the ministry's trustee and parent engagement allocation. This report is provided for information. I'm happy to answer any questions that trustees may have.
Are there any questions from trustees? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is item C, the 2025-2026 Math Achievement Action Plan Priority Schools Monitoring Update, and turn it over to Superintendent Mohammed Hamid.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This mid-year monitoring update on the 2025-2026 Math Achievement Action Plan with a focus specifically on the ministry-identified priority schools is before you. As we move through year 3 of the plan, this work builds on the strong foundation established in the first 2 years within the priority schools. While efforts centered on strengthening curriculum alignment in the 60-minute math block, deepening educator content knowledge through collaborative structures, and embedding high-impact instructional practices with greater coherence. At this midpoint in the year, we continue to see encouraging signs of growth within priority schools. Educators are continuing to report strength and confidence, particularly through job-embedded coaching, structured, explicit instruction, and collaborative planning across grade teams. These shifts reflect growing collective efficacy and increasingly consistent instructional practice within the schools receiving this targeted support. Report card data in priority schools shows continued reductions in significant underperformance alongside increased credit attainment in grade 9. EQAO results align with these patterns, including gradual reductions in level 1 performance and a strong clustering of students in the upper range of level 2, positioned close to the provincial standard. This positioning highlights a clear opportunity for focused acceleration in the second half of the year. Student perception data further informs the work. Mathematical identity remains relatively strong in early grades within priority schools, while the transition points in grade 6 and grade 9 continue to guide targeted supports and intervention and a focus for our continued work. We recognize that meaningful improvement in mathematics achievement requires steady, sustained effort over time. The first 2 years of the plan establish clarity and coherence within priority school. Year 3 is about consolidating these gains, building on the momentum already evident, and accelerating more students from approaching the standard into meeting the standard and exceeding it. This mid-year update is provided for trustee information.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Student Trustee Shetty?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. My first question is, in the report, it mentions in Lens 2, what students are experiencing, I'm good at math. I'm wondering how many students were surveyed and which students were surveyed, because I can't find that in the report.
Thank you. So that would be all of the grade 3 and grade 6 students that are identified in the ministry, in the 21 ministry priority schools. 21 elementary priority schools and the 2 ministry priority secondary schools.
Got it, thank you.
Grade 9 students, sorry, in the priority schools, yes.
Student Trustee Singh?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I have one quick question. In Priority Action 3, there's a board-level strategy which says provide a digital math tool for support for students in mathematics. I was wondering what digital math tools are we providing and how are they selected?
Yes, so the tool that we are currently using is called Education Perfect. And so as a district, we are given a list of potential math tools from the ministry, and then we select from those that list of school tools that the ministry provides us.
Student Trustee Shetty?
Sorry, just to follow up, when it comes to selecting the tool, are we gathering any student input when it terms of like which interface looks better, is nicer to use, or how is that math tool being selected?
That's an excellent question, and that is something as we begin to think about what we're moving forward to, I will take back to the team. I do think that student input in the selection of the tool is an area that we need to pay more attention to. So thank you for that. Noted.
Thank you.
Trustee Thatcher?
Thank you, Chair. I feel that there are some there's some very encouraging information in this report. One of the things I recognize is that we're moving students from level 2 to level 3, which is what we need to be doing as our students' confidence is building around them being good math students. I also recognize that still in grades 3, 6, and 9, the largest group is still level 2, although there is a large percentage, sometimes in grade 6, for example, 40% of students are still at level 2, but 70% of them are in the top half of the band, so they're 2.5 plus and approaching level 3. I think that as I said, I do feel this is very positive, and I'm looking forward to further information as we move more of those students into level 3, which of course is performing consistently at the provincial level. I see there are a number of strategies in place, professional learning, coaching, and resources that are offered, and we've got our 60-minute math block.
That's right.
I'm also pleased to see that we have offered additional planning time for teachers to work together to develop their long-range and unit plans and lesson plans, which I think is great. There was something that was mentioned in there that I just wasn't sure if I'd heard it before, and it's called a Vault digital tool. I believe it said in there that it was something that was piloted. I just don't think I've heard that particular term before. Just wondering what that is.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So yes, the Vault is a tool that is developed by the company that develops the EQAO. So it's essentially an opportunity to familiarize students with the actual tool that the EQAO is, the digital tool that EQAO is administered on, and then from students completing a number of sort of assessments using that tool, we can generate data on where students are performing, where students might need to have some gaps that need to be closed. And of course, the byproduct of that is that students become familiar with the actual EQAO tool itself as well. So that data provides us with diagnostic data that we then take prior to, as the year is, because these springboards are happening, these assessments are happening through the year, and then school leaders can then take that data and then work with the math teachers around responding to the data, the information that diagnostic yields around student performance.
Student Trustee Shetty.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. My question kind of goes to standardization. If I'm not mistaken, the report talks a lot about best mathematical practices when it comes to implementing those. I was wondering, is there board direction on when it comes to what are those best practices, and where does it kind of go from this is what the board is telling you to do versus teacher to teacher, those minuscule differences? Because I think from school to school we see a variety when it comes to the things that we learn and the way that it's taught. So I'm wondering what the standardization regarding that is.
Thank you for that question. Yes, so the ministry guides us with the high impact instructional practices. So they've identified 9 high impact instructional practices that form the core of a comprehensive math program. And so what we then do, of course, educators can use their professional wisdom in making a determination on what pedagogical approaches best meet the needs of the students they have before them. So what we provide is we provide opportunity in the priority schools for students with a coach to work through all of those practices to then be more able to, based on the assessment they're gathering from students completing tasks, to know which practices they then need to use in order to wrap the learning around the needs of the students. So to our previous conversation, so every student can cross their stage.
Seeing no further questions, thank you. Moving on to positive school climates emergency response protocols, and I'll turn it over to Associate Director Markovsky and Superintendent Bowman.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The report can be found on pages 65 to 70 in your package. This report provides the Board of Trustees with an overview of DDSB emergency response policies, procedures, and protocols that guide prevention, preparedness, and response in DDSB schools. It also outlines recent system-level reinforcement of these expectations with school administrators and identifies next steps, including the continued internal review of protocols and the evaluation of an external assessment to identify opportunities to strengthen training, consistency, and implementation. This report is for information. Happy to take any questions.
Trustee Cunningham.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This is obviously a very timely report, given some of the issues we've had in Pickering at William Dunbar. And in particular, the incidents at William Dunbar, the lockdown was during out-of-school instructional times, which I know you've been taking a look at and you mentioned this report. So it says that you've placed emphasis on preparedness during those instructional times, and I just wondered what that looks like. Having had that assessment, what changes are in place, what's happening there? Thank you.
Great question. So we are currently working, tomorrow actually will be session 3 of 3 of part 1 of administrator training. And so what we are asking schools to take into consideration is going back and doing a job embedded approach where we are going to do an out of structure. So during the unstructured times of either before school, at recess, at lunch, doing a emergency preparedness drill, so either a lockdown or a hold and secure. Based on the information that they will then provide to us, we will then talk through what some next steps and fill some of those gaps. So we know that with recent experiences that we have received lots of feedback. We've also taken a close look at where there may be gaps in communication. So thus the response at this point. Thanks.
Trustee Linton.
Thank you, and for you, Chair. Just sharing a bit of concern that I have about the communication of some of these incidents. I know there's a model where when an incident happens within a municipality, those trustees are messaged and there's communication, but in some cases, or in many cases, other trustees from across the region may not get that notification. I'm just wondering around the logic to that, given how fluid our students are in terms of the schools they're attending, the flow of information, and you know, as the chair said earlier, just we are trustees of the board, so you know, it was a little shocking and surprising to me that some trustees didn't know about the incident at Dunbar, even though it had such a a profound and large effect on the community, but right across the system, given the methods that were used to engage the students to engage in said behavior. So just wondering if that's something we can look at, revisit, or the rationale to why that strategy.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Trustee Linton, if I could ask for some clarification. Now, I know we do push out information to trustees in relation to emergency response protocols when they do occur. Are you specifically talking about sort of the learning that came from this incident and how it is that we communicate broadly to the system? I'm just seeking some clarification on what you're asking there.
Yes, and through you, Chair, it's two-pronged. So it's, yes, learning from this situation. Again, I think the surprise to me was that some trustees didn't know about the incident. But we've seen this over, the last couple of years. I remember we had an incident at J. Clark. The Ajax trustees were made aware of it, but I don't think any other trustees were, even though there were questions raised from some Pickering families around whether this incident actually took place. So I'm just concerned about that communication strategy and if this is something that can be revisited. Next.
Thank you, through you, Chair. One thing I will say, Trustee Linton, I know for anything that would meet the requirement of emergency response protocol, we do have a structure in place with trustees where we push that information out. Oftentimes, if it's in relation to specific details, we do work with the local municipal trustees just to keep you informed, but happy to take that into consideration in terms of how it is that we could further support that information sharing broadly with trustees. When a certain threshold is met, we do even issue an issue note in relation to that, but I could speak specifically because I was supporting the communication with our communications department in relation to this. We were sending out emails in response to the emergency response protocols to ensure that the trustees were informed.
Trustee Cunningham?
Thank you. I'm going to spin off Trustee Linton a little bit. So I think what I'm hearing the concern is that if an issue happens at a Pickering school, Trustee Linton and I are notified, but Trustee Thatcher, Trustee Pinello, Trustee Arsenault are not. And I will say probably about 50% of the calls or emails that I get as a trustee are not from people in the Pickering area. People go to a trustee that perhaps they have heard the name of from a friend or who they share a lived experience with, or that they search Facebook groups until they find the name of a trustee and that's who they contact. People go outside their borders. And maybe even be more than 50% of the calls I receive don't necessarily have to do with Pickering. So if an incident happens at J. Clark, at any school, if I'm not aware of it, I may hear of it first on social media, because it's not even the phone calls. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups and I get tagged. And then I'm like, oh, I have no idea what you're talking about. And it becomes awkward. So I think what Trustee Linton is asking for is that instead of sending to the local area trustees, you send to the trustees at large. Is that clear?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Trustee Cunningham, that actually does take place. Are you referring to emergency response protocol? So what are you referring to in relation to an incident? We do have a structure in place right now that when an emergency response protocol is in place, an email does go out to all trustees. That actually does take place right now. So I'm a bit confused in terms of what you're seeking.
Trustee Linton?
Thank you. I'm through you, Chair. Not to prolong this conversation, but I think we can pull up examples where there've been emails that have sent directly to trustees, like in Pickering, again, to Trustee Cunningham's point, and there doesn't seem to be any other trustee copy. To be a little more specific, understanding the breadth and challenges at Dunbar, I'm not sure that too many trustees were emailed or notified about the first couple of incidents. I know it was very well communicated. Our superintendent out there is phenomenal and has been communicating all the way through, but I'm not sure that all trustees knew about the initial incidents. So some of it is emergency protocol, but some of it is around where there is a situation, a heightened situation, especially around violence in our schools.
Thank you, through you, Chair. And Trustee Linton, I'm happy, and I guess Trustee Cunningham, I'm happy to take your comments back. I know when something reaches a heightened state across the district and meets the need for us to create an issue note, that issue note is shared broadly with trustees. Similar with emergency response protocols, we do send an email out to all the trustees to inform you, but if perhaps there's an opportunity for us to do a deeper dive in terms of how information is shared to ensure that you're all in the know, happy to reflect on that and review our practices.
Trustee Thatcher?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I appreciate having this report. I am certainly aware that it's not, once every 2 years that we look at these things. It's a regular thing within our board. Every single school is involved in proactive and preventative measures throughout the year, from fire drills to preparing for lockdowns. So I'd certainly appreciate just this update, and I think it's worthwhile for us every so often to highlight some of the real concerns and just remind people of important things like, for example, supervision, I think, is one of the most important things, that we know that our teachers are out there on duty. They're scanning the yard for people who don't belong there, and they do this in a timely fashion. In the report, just a quick question for me. The report mentioned informal I'm aware that there's a supervision schedule and a certain number of minutes per week that teachers are out on supervision, but it did mention informal supervision, and I'm not quite sure what that is.
Thanks, through you, Chair. Where is the mention of informal? I need the context, sorry, Trustee Thatcher. I would say, I mean, while you look for it, I would say informal supervision may be other educators and staff who are out on the yard. It may be through administration. It could be a variety of means. So we do have collective agreements which outline number of minutes of supervision for each 5-day cycle, and that is a scheduled, but there also may be times when there are other individuals out on the yard, such as administration. That would be the informal supervision time.
It's section under section 5.0.
Right.
Security and safety procedures. It mentions this procedure outlines proactive prevention strategies, supervision expectations, formal and informal.
Yeah, so again, it would be the expectations around supervision as opposed to who directly would be supervising.
So for example, would that include the 20 minutes at lunchtime? I'm talking about the earlier grades, not high school here, but the 20 minutes at lunchtime when the people on duty are only lunchroom supervisors. Is that in every school, Superintendent Bowman?
The supervision schedules look different across. Are there times across elementary schools when lunchroom supervisors are working in classrooms and there are no educators? There would be. But
on the yard? Is there a 20-minute period on the yard?
Out on the yard, there would always be a mixture of educators, support staff, and our lunchroom supervisors.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no further questions, moving on to item E, which is the OPSPA update, and I'll turn it over to Trustee Edwards.
Thank you. This is the OPSPA update for March 2nd. I'll deal with a couple of informational items before we get into what page, the motion on page 71. Basically, the Education, Labor Relations, and Human Resources Symposium will be held in Toronto, April 23rd and 24th. The registration is now open. On February 13th, the Ombudsman Paul Dubé submitted recommendations to the Ministry of Education regarding proposed regulations for police school board partnerships. Under the new Education Act provisions, which may mandate school resource officer programs, the Ombudsman is pushing for increased transparency and accountability. His key recommendations include providing clearer program guidance, requiring formal memoranda of understandings, and ensuring complaint processes are clearly posted. He has also called for central systems to monitor complaints and a formal privacy and consultation to protect student data. The Ministry of Education had previously announced updates to the grade 7 and 8 and 10 history curriculum for implementation in the 2026-27 school year. A memo was sent out that states the updated curriculum is now available to all Ontarians, including parents, educators, and students, on the Curriculum and Resources website. The existing curriculum will remain in effect for the remainder of the school year. So, as you are aware, Bill 33, the Supporting Children and Students Act, received royal assent at Queen's Park on November 20th, 2025. Introduced by the Ontario Minister of Education, the 14-page bill included changes to the Education Act that gave the minister sweeping powers to take over school boards based on issues of public interest, issues that the minister himself determines to be of public interest. Other changes also include changes for public colleges and universities, including changes to admission and university fee registrations, final approval of school naming, and the ability to mandate school, and school naming. In the media, the Minister of Education has repeatedly stated that he has not changed his mind in removing the role of democratically elected trustees for public school boards. He continues to state that due to language and denominational rights, public French and Catholic school boards trustees will remain. However, it remains uncertain if the role of trustee in these boards may be curtailed to language and denominational rights, respectively, as this is what is currently happening in supervised boards. The removal of elected trustees diminishes the structure intentionally set out in the Education Act. School boards are responsible for delivering provincially funded education services, including provincially directed curriculum, with locally elected oversight and accountability. Democratically elected trustees are to make nonpartisan decisions based on community consultation and input from parents and community. Removing elected trustees will simply concentrate authority further away from the parents and the community to Queen's Park in a heavily politicized environment. With 7 boards under supervision where democratically elected trustees have been removed, we are now hearing the impact to students and parents and how their voices are being removed. Particularly, we are concerned about the voices of students who represent marginalized communities. In supervised boards, students and Indigenous trustees no longer have a voice at the board table. Parents and stakeholders from supervised boards have seen changes that reduce equity and accountability, such as equity and human rights office staff being reduced, removal of nonpartisan trustees from discipline committee hearings, cancellation of community consultations, and rescission of policy decisions that were made to address the historically underrepresentation of marginalized communities. For these reasons, on February 24th, the Black Trustees Caucus of OPSPA sent an opening letter to Ford government and the Minister of Education as we approach the first year mark of the Ontario Human Rights Dreams Delayed report on anti-Black racism. An OPSPA media release was also sent out. As said, elected trustees have historically played an important role in board-level oversight related to monitoring race-based disparities in discipline and program access, reviewing systematic discrimination and exclusionary practices, and advancing equity and human rights obligations through policy and community engagement. The BTTC has respectfully asked the Ministry of Education to take action on 4 items. And one is a public response to the Dreams Delay report, including a clear implementation plan with timelines and accountability measures. 2, identify dedicated funding to support the implementation of anti-Black racism and Black student achievement initiatives. 3, to provide direction to boards under supervision to preserve equity offices, advisory structures, and governance oversight related to student discipline and human rights. And 4, to clarify expectations for transparent public reporting on race-based student outcomes. As well as the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis Trustee Council of OSPA continue to share their concerns to the Premier and Minister of Education on oversight impact for Indigenous students and their communities in supervised boards. OSPA does recognize that there are challenges with school board governance. However, healthy democracy does not unilaterally make sweeping changes like removing of democratically elected school board trustees to address challenges. The Education Act requires school boards to consult students, parents, and communities' voices on all policy decisions. Why is it okay for the provincial government to make sweeping changes which reduces the voice of students, parents, and communities with no input or consultation? For this reason, public English school boards across the province are making motions to write to the Minister of Education and the Premier of Ontario to conduct a formal wide consultation with all public education stakeholders before making any governance changes or decisions that would eliminate English public school board trustees, and that the Ontario Ombudsman Office review the potential impacts of removing education public school board trustees with respect to fairness, openness, and accountability. These letters would be sent to the Premier, Minister of Education, and all MPPs and MPs and OPSPO board members. So you can see on page 71 of your packages the motions that have been basically recommended for boards to look at and make basically resolutions, pass resolutions to, and basically dictating the letters to go to the minister and the ombudsman. And that is my report. Comments on the motions and would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Are you moving the motions?
Second. I have to pull up my page. I would like to move that motion as far as that the Durham District School Board write a letter to the Minister of Education and Premier requesting that a formal provincial-wide consultation process be developed and implemented before making any governance changes or decisions that would result in the elimination of English Public School Board trustees, and that the government conduct research to support an evidence-based decision regarding the best governance model to support the education system, while also promoting open dialogue and two-way conversations, and that this motion and resulting letter be sent to all, basically coterminous, all MPPs, MPs, OPSPO members, and coterminous boards. And that the DDSB write to the Ontario Ombudsman in support of recent letters from English public school boards asking that the Ombudsman's offices to review the potential impacts of removing English public school board trustees with respect to fairness, openness, transparency, and accountability, and that those letters be sent to the Premier, Minister of Education, all MPPs, MPs, and OPSA board members.
Do I have a seconder? Trustee Pinello? Do you wish to speak to the motion, Trustee Edwards?
I previously said a lot before the motion, so I have nothing more to say.
Any questions or comments from trustees? Trustee Pinello?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, just a request to do a recorded vote, please.
In the motion is on the screen as well. So, I mean, I'm going to put my name on the list. I just want to say, I mean, I support the motion, but I am really disappointed that it's here now and not months ago. I feel like saying better late than never, but I'll still support the motion. Seeing no further questions or comments, I'll turn it over to Jillian for the recorded vote.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I'll call the recorded vote. Trustee Arsenault?
In favor.
Trustee Brown?
In favor.
Trustee Cowie?
In favor.
Trustee Cunningham?
In favor.
Trustee Edwards?
In favor.
Trustee Jackula?
In favor.
Trustee Linton?
In favor.
Trustee Morton?
In favor.
Trustee Pinello? In favor. Trustee Thatcher?
In favor.
And Chair Oldfield?
In favor.
Thank you. And student trustee non-binding vote, student trustee Render?
In favor.
Thank you. Student trustee Shetty?
In favor.
And student trustee Singh?
In favor.
Through you, Chair, we have 11 trustees in favor, 1 trustee absent, and 3 student trustees in favor.
Thank you. Any further questions on the report? Oh, sorry, the motion passes. Any further questions for Trustee Edwards? Student Trustee Shetty?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just had a question. As we know, when student trustees boards are being put under supervision, that includes student trustees. And I think a question that I have, and I'm sure my co-s have, and our counterparts in other boards also have, is due to the removal of student trustees in these supervised boards, I'm wondering if OPSPA is giving any recommended action or support to these boards in terms of how they can continue to uplift student voices. Is there any like instructions that boards are being given, like for example, forming a forum for students or anything of the sort in terms of from an OPSPA perspective that boards are like being told to, they're being encouraged to do?
Thank you. And just like the trustees that are in supervised boards, basically their communication has been cut off. However, they are still a member of OPSPA. And same with the trustees are still a member of OSTA-ECO as well, those that are basically under supervision. So they continue to share basically information with OSTA-ECO, and OSTA-ECO does continue to share information with those trustees that keep in contact under there. And then it really comes down to that the individual trustees have formed basically groups or have, many of them belong to already existing parent groups and community groups, so they continue to share whatever information they have through those as well. There's nothing been directed specifically from OPSPA because OPSPA, as they say, is a board association and not an individual trustee association, although they are a voice of trustees. So they do, as I said, but they do ensure that the communication lines are open to those organizations and that the information is provided to those trustees.
Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to the student trustee report, and I'm turn over to student trustee Shetty to start.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. At our monthly Student Senate meeting in February, we did something different and took time to reflect on progress to date, what has gone well, what hasn't, and what we want to strengthen moving forward. The key next step is improving communication with school-based student parliaments so that Student Senate continues to be a meaningful and representative student voice structure across the district. As many grade 12 students prepare for their next stage in life, we are also seeing a mix of nervousness and excitement across schools. We took a moment to acknowledge that transition and the importance of being present in it. Ichi-go, ichi-e. A reminder to value each moment and encounter it as something that won't come again in the same way.
We would like to thank the district leaders who supported the student trustee election process. We are pleased to acknowledge that the newly elected student trustees for the 26-27 school year, Sydney Lee, Lena Sadat, and Artin Shoje. They are here this evening to observe how standing committee meetings operate and to learn more about board governance in preparation for their upcoming roles. We look forward to mentoring and supporting them as they transition into their student trustee leadership roles.
In recognition of Children's Mental Health Week from May 3rd to 9th, 2026, we will continue to amplify awareness, encourage student engagement, and promote available support for students. As part of this year's focus, Student Senate is helping host a student-led mental health symposium. This year's theme, Rewire. The symposium will focus on rethinking about how we interact with technology and promoting healthier digital habits. The symposium is scheduled for May 6, 2026, with the continued guidance of staff mental health lead Stephanie Pellebor and team. We're at an advanced stage of it in our planning and look forward to sharing further updates closer to the event.
Thank you. Any questions for student trustees? Trustee Linton?
Thank you, you Chair. Just mentioned the Student Mental Health Week in the symposium. What grade of students, what are the grades of the students that are able to attend?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It's mostly secondary schools, so we're bringing in student leaders from these schools and helping them engage in different workshops and connecting them with different community supports. So it is focused around the secondary level.
Seeing no further questions, moving on to the Ignite Durham Learning Foundation update, and I'll turn it over to Trustee Arsenault.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Culturally and responsive and supports. IDLF has been intentionally strengthening culturally appropriate and affirming supports for students and families. IDLF focuses in ensuring students feel seen, respected, and represented in the sources they provide. Black History Month, the Depot highlights, in recognition of Black History Month, IDLF developed a communication piece highlighting supports available for Black students at the Depot. This includes culturally relevant and prepared food options, hair and skincare products that reflect the diverse needs. Books where students see themselves represented and including works including works authored by Black writers. Representation matters when students see themselves reflected in supports around them. It strengthens belonging and gives dignity. Ramadan supports. IDLF was privileged to receive a grant to support families with Ramadan food hampers. Hampers included meats, yogurt, dates, lots of yummy foods and treats for kids. Foods that are both nourishing and culturally meaningful. These hampers helped ensure families can gather at iftar and with nutrition, culturally appropriate foods, reducing financial stresses during a spiritual significant time. In addition, IDLF was distributing 15,000 in gift cards to support Muslim students and their families with iftar and Eid celebrations. This provides, again, dignity, flexibility, and choice for all families to purchase foods and meaningful traditions and decorations. In closing, IDLF equity is not just being accessed, It's also affirming respect, ensuring every student feels valued and supported. Thank you to all the donors and supporters who stand behind IDLF and the DDS kids and families. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Trustee Arsenault? Seeing none, that takes us to correspondence. And item A is February 25th, 2026 letter from Ajax MPP, questions about air conditioning in schools that host licensed childcare programs. And I believe that staff have something to share. So I'll turn it over to AD Bianca.
Great, thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Certainly have some background information that I can share with trustees, and we can work on a more robust follow-up in the future. DDSB has air-conditioned spaces in all of our schools, although fully air-conditioned schools are limited to about 25 different sites. We employ a combination of central air conditioning as well as cooled conditioned air. The biggest impediment to providing full air conditioning is funding. We can value engineer our new builds to provide cooled conditioned air, but the cost of retrofitting all of our buildings would be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So for that reason, we have moved to a respite style cooling program in the schools. And quite honestly, during the school year, the number of, it varies from year to year, but the number of, high heat days is relatively limited compared to the summer. However, the summers are getting hotter and they can be quite warm when we are running programs full-time in the schools. We do try and locate our programs in schools that already have air conditioning or cooling, and all of our purpose-built childcares are air-conditioned. So I think what we're talking about in the letter is probably our school-age day programs. Unfortunately, the question of portable air conditioning comes up all the time, and unfortunately, standard residential style units just aren't suitable for installation in the classrooms. The window design can't accommodate them, and we have to deal with things like condensation, mold development, that type of thing. However, there are larger commercial units that can be used, and in fact, the DDSB, we do own some. We deploy them to schools when we do have air conditioning breakdowns, and as well, there are some summer programs that are run by our partners, Grandview, that serve students with some sensitive needs, and they are installed in those rooms at the partner's expense, and as well as the additional energy that they use in their operation. The units are professionally installed in the warm weather and removed at the user's cost, and the energy is billed back, as I said. We being facility services, can certainly develop a cost model that we could make available and share with partners to see if there is uptake. Unfortunately, it is not inexpensive, but we are happy to share that information with our partners to see if they would be interested.
Thank you. Any questions from trustees? Seeing none, seeing no further business, can I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn this meeting? Trustee Brown, Trustee Cunningham, all those in favor? Opposed? Have a great evening. This meeting's adjourned.